Advisory Chair. Today is March 11th, and I am calling the Academic Advisory Committee meeting to order. At this time, will the Secretary call the roll to establish if there is a quorum?
Yeah. Good evening. Mr. Nate Collins? Here. Thank you. Reginald Durandis, Ayit and Exxon Inc. Laura Fellman, School Board District 6. Rachel Frischberg, School Board District 3.
I'm present.
Randy Gabriel, ESC Advisory Council. Sherelle Golden, School Board District 1.
I'm here.
Latoria Hilliard, Coalition for Black Student Achievement. Dr. Gabriela Mendez, Hispanic Education Coalition.
Present online. Hello, everyone.
Thank you. Eugenia Millender, School Board District 7. Charmin Postel, Palm Beach County Council of PTA PTSA.
Present online. After roll call, I'll be in the building.
Thank you. Sheila Scott Lubin, Palm Beach State College.
Present online.
Thank you. Imran Siddiqui, School Board District 5.
Good evening, Present.
Christine Tibbs, School Board District 2.
Hello, everyone. Present.
Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. At this time, we will entertain. Excuse me. I apologize. Excuse me. My apologies. At this time, we'll continue on the agenda, and we will go to the next item on the agenda, which is, I don't know, my allergies is acting up, so I do apologize. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from last month. The minutes were distributed.
All motion to approve.
Thank you. Can you state your name for the record?
Randy Gabriel.
Thank you. Motion by Randy Gabriel.
Second, Sherelle Golden.
Thank you. Minutes have been approved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Or are there any discussions about the minutes? Any discussions? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. At this time, we are a little early, but we will entertain any public comments in the room or online. Hearing no public comments online, are there any public commenters or anyone in the public, or at this time, anyone who is in the room who have not had the opportunity to introduce yourself for the record? Please use this opportunity to introduce yourself.
Madam Chair, joining us here in the boardroom is Paige Lewis. Ms. Lewis, do you have any public comments? Okay, thank you. Thanks for joining us. And also joining us here in the boardroom is our Director for Elementary Education, Adrian Howard, and our Director for Secondary Education, Eva Swiner.
Welcome. Thank you all for coming in and joining us.
And Madam Chair, we do have a hand raised, Dr. Mendez, and before Dr. Mendez open the mic, I do want to make you aware that Dr. Millender, she did join us this evening.
Thank you. I'm at the back door. If somebody can open the door for me, you are all recognized, and let the minutes reflect that
the attendants as they have arrived.
Okay, Dr. Mendez.
You are recognized.
Yeah, thank you. I received an email with the policies. However, I need a request to access them. And I requested access, and I think it was denied. Actually got access denied. So I don't know how.
Did you receive the request? Are you trying to open the request with the email address that we have on file for you, or a separate email address?
Oh, I am not sure. Okay.
That's
I'll try
okay, Ms.
that.
Wood
Thank
is
you.
giving, she's providing access now, Dr. Mendez.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Any additional questions? At this time, we'll move along on the agenda for updates from the Chief Academic Officer,
Madam Chair.
Dr. Sheffield.
Okay, Madam Chair, my update is going to come, a large part of my update will come from the instructional review, and that's why I've asked the academic team to join me this evening. So I'm going to utilize the time that I have for the academic update. I want to add it on to the discussion around the mid-year instructional review. In that mid-year instructional review, it would take us back to the data that we looked at our last meeting. And what we're going to do from looking at the data pretty much is now, this is the data, how we are responding to the data and moving forward. So that's why I'm very pleased to be able to have both, again, the Director of Elementary Ed and the Director of Secondary Ed to join me as we talk about some of the work that we're doing within the Department of Curriculum. But on the line set, we do have some pieces to celebrate, but also we know that we have still some growth opportunities there. So, Madam Chair, it's at the will and the request that I'm making to allow my update to come as part of the mid-year instructional review.
That is, if there is no objection, seeing that Mr. Rowell is here with us, and he typically is here for a quick update, unless he would like to stay for the remainder of the day. If there is no objection with the body, can we skip that area of the agenda for just a minute and go to allow Mr. Rowell to give his updates for the Library Media Services, and then we'll come back and have the presentation. Are there any objections? Ms. Feldman, your hands is up. Is that an objection? Oh, it was a.
I didn't think my hand was up.
Sorry, I'm seeing something else. My apologies. Hearing no objection, Mr. Rowell.
Good afternoon, everybody. My updates are very quick. Thank you guys for keeping up with giving us the commentary that we need. We do appreciate the time that it takes to do that. We do anticipate the orders to be slowing down some as we move towards the latter part of the year, and most of the funds have been expended. For the state funds that pass through my department directly to the libraries, the deadline is actually this upcoming Friday, so that should slow things down a little bit, and then we should be able to move on with the rest of the year. But that's all the updates that I have for now.
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time for Mr. Rowell? Hearing no questions, unless you would like to stay with us for the remainder of the meeting, you are dismissed. Thank you. And thank you to the body. Please, Dr. Sheffield, proceed with the presentation from the mid-year instructional review.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, it's of course, as always, a great time where we come with this division here to just look in regards to the work that we're doing as it pertains in the area of academics. Those of you that were with us last month, I'm going to ask that you just bear with me. You're going to see some of the slides that you saw on last month, particularly around the data pieces. But I'm going to, and it was important that I left the data slides in, but what you're going to see in terms of the new slides, the new pieces that have been added, is going to be around some of the work that we're doing as we talk about responding to the data in regards to what we're seeing from Progress Monitoring 1 to Progress Monitoring 2, and the work that we're doing leading up and preparing our students for their end-of-the-year assessments. And I hate to make reference to assessments because we should not be teaching to a test. We should just be providing quality instructions because that's just what should be expected of us in this business of educating our students, educating the total child. But not here or there, we know that it is here. We do have the standards, we have the benchmarks, and we must align ourselves accordingly, and just making certain that we're providing the opportunities for our students to where they are successful for those for those assessments that are been placed in front of them. A common theme that you're going to also hear this evening is going to be a lot around the instructional pedagogy and the professional development, because that's really and truly a lot on what we've sort of wanted to focus on a lot this year is around the instructional pedagogy, the professional development, and what are we doing and how we are enhancing and working alongside with our teachers. Because we know now when our teachers are going, when you're going into the College of Education, many will think that, they graduated from the college education, they're ready to hit the classrooms, they have all those skills, all those unique tools and so forth, they're ready to go. But at the end of the day, what we do realize is that when our teachers are coming into us, some of them are coming directly from a college of education, some of them are coming in terms of a second career, and so the support that we're providing, it just looks different. And most importantly, I tell them all the time, is on the job training. So a common theme is going to be what we're doing, again, to enhance the instructional pedagogy of our teachers and trying to ensure their success. I will say to you that no, we have not closed all of those growth opportunities that many may see as we look through the data. We realize that we still have some gaps there, and we're just working alongside with the team and identifying those gaps and continue to look for ways in terms of collaborating, working with the state, working with other stakeholders in terms of making those needed adjustments and so forth. So some of last Wednesday, I'm not sure those that were able to watch the board workshop on last Wednesday, Mr. Turney and myself both, we did do this mid-year instructional review with the board on last Wednesday, updating the board in regards to where we are as a district, and most importantly, around the post-ESSER. And what does the post-ESSER means? That means in regards to, the past 3 years or so, there were tremendous funding that were coming in regards to around the COVID and trying to close what we call those COVID slides and so forth. But as I tell people all the time, our students, we had those academic slides prior to COVID, the slides widened. It's what has happened. So you're going to hear talk a little bit in regards to how do we look and how we're going to continue the work in which we've been able to do, some of the work that we were able to do with ESSER, and now that those ESSER dollars will be gone. And so some of that, what you're going to hear again, is that we utilize a great deal of those fundings around building teacher capacity once those fundings were gone. So here, Madam Chair, everyone here, again, for the most part, you all would have seen these slides at our last meeting, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but just for the sake of those that are just joining us that were not able to be with us at our last month meeting, is that on this particular slide here, then I'm going to advance my way a couple of slides ahead, but this particular slide here, I'm really and truly just talked in regards to, our progress monitoring data, the predictions, and also understanding that, this year we talk a lot around, some baseline data and really trying to figure it out and making certain that we're just doing what it is that we can do in terms of closing these gaps. Here with this first column here in reading, and it talks around the prediction right now after our students had completed the progress monitoring 1 and 2 data. And again, these are strictly predictions. You could see here around our grades 9 through 12, this was ELA, that our ELA scores were actually up in secondary from where they were actually last year in progress monitoring 3 last spring. Then it goes up from grades 6 through 8, and then here grades 3 through 5, and our grade 3, and then we were looking at our K2 data and so forth. Then when we come over to math, the second row here, second column here, talks again about our math data here. Then we have our science, and then our civics data the civics data here that we have, how our students perform in the civics last year, and what the predictions are here, again, for FY24. This particular slide here, we also looked at this slide last month as well. On this particular slide, it just was by the various subgroups, and I'm not going to, again, go through it because we went through it in detail, spent a lot of time with this last month there with Dr. Miller. But again, when you start up top here in terms of looking, the reading is up top, our math is underneath, and you have your K2 here, your 3, 5, grades 6 through 8, and grades 9 through 10. And again, these are the same data that we looked at the previous slide, but what is here, it is broken down in regards to our subgroups. Here, let's look at our Asian group, and I'm just going to show you in terms of how we are reading this slide here. Progress Monitoring 3, this was the end of their spring test on last year. Based on all the data that were coming in for our Asian students from the last spring in regards to the prediction for FY23, the prediction for Progress Monitoring 3, it is saying right now we're predicting those students to come in, say K2 at 65.4%, grades 3 through 5, 72.5, 6 through 8, 75.7, and then 79.8%, grades 9 through 10. Then we will continue to read over. Then when we get to our Black students here, you could see here, it's very concerning, not just for our Black students, where we have at 36.3% of our Black students that were in grades 9 through 10 that were last year had a level of proficiency, but then we're not getting excited because right now they're predicted here at a 40.9%. We know that is just not where we want our students to be. We could do better, our students could do better. And it's the same here with our Hispanic students at 40%, then here they're now predicted 5 percentage point higher here at 45%. We're seeing progress, but this progress, again, we're not closing the gaps in terms of, at the measure in terms of what we would like to see again. Now, I will continue to go on. You could see, you just read this graph here, you just continue to go on across. And then we probably will come back to the data, but what I want to do is, I'm gonna spend some time because I want to have discussion in regards to what are some of those pieces that we're doing in terms of trying to really slice this data and work with our teachers that are there working alongside with the students. And that's one part, because we know that teaching and learning must also continue outside of the classroom and outside of that instructional day. And then some of those programs and things that we're doing outside of the school hours and as well in terms of what we're going to be planning to continue working with our students here during this summer. And then I gave you a sample in terms of how we were reading, how to read this graph. For those that had not seen it up top for reading, you will read it the same way here for the math. And then, of course, our science data. Our science data looks much more, our science data looks much better here than our reading and our math. We can see the progress that are happening here with our science. You're going to hear us talk about in regards to why do we think we're making the kind of strides that we are making here with our science in various spots. And the same thing here with some of our subgroups here around civics. Now, when we talk about the data, and I know you'll probably ask me to go back to the slides for those that are just seeing it for the first time. One thing that we have put into place this year, and that you're going to hear us talk a little bit about, Dr. Swiner, Ms. Howard, myself, is going to be a lot in regards around the professional learning. You're going to hear us talk about the work that we've been doing all year as it pertains to with the University of Florida and with the Lassinger Center around, around K2, our K3 reading initiative, as it pertains to the science of reading, really leaning in regards to, the small group instruction and that approach in which we're taking there. You're also going to hear us talking in regards to a lot of that monitoring progress and using these data checkpoints that we have been really using all year long, from the months of October to December, February, March, or what have you. Then of course, I think another big piece in terms of a lot of the work that we have done here and being intentional with this year, now that we have seen the shift from FSA to this new progress monitoring assessment here with the state, on top of that with the new standards, is that we've done more work. Excuse me. I'm dealing with a sinus infection, excuse me. We've done more work, excuse me, working with the working with the regional offices. Excuse me for a minute. Excuse me. More work, collaboratively working with our regional offices, our principal supervisors, and so forth. Every Tuesday, can't seem to get this. Every Tuesday, the curriculum team is meeting with the regional offices team to where we are reporting out. We're talking in regards to what they're seeing as they're visiting their campuses, as they're doing their campus walkthroughs, as they're visiting the classrooms, and looking at, in terms of the instruction from the student standpoint, from the teacher standpoint, in regards to what they're seeing, what those immediate needs are still. We do have, what you don't see on this slide here, to assist with that kind of collaboration, is that we have developed a common classroom walkthrough tool. On that common classroom walkthrough tool, that's helping us really gauge to where we can have authentic and deliberate conversations around teaching and learning. What we're looking for on those classroom walkthrough tools, with the same lens, is around high-quality instructional materials, making certain that the materials that we're putting in front of our students, making certain that those materials are of high quality. And also making certain and looking at the instructional pedagogy of the teacher, what kind of support that we need to go in and provide the teacher if the teacher is having difficulty in terms of the concept, in terms of understanding those standards, those benchmarks, and really looking at the depth of knowledge, the DKO of the lessons that are being taught. And most importantly, also looking in regards to the student engagement, where the student's taking some ownership for their learnings and so forth. This year, started in January, I think, right now, out of this building alone, and the vast majority is coming out of the curriculum department, to where we've started in January, right when we returned for second semester, where we have over 80 staff members from the district, those that actually have their teaching certificate, again, the vast majority from the Department of Curriculum, to where they are actually going out and we've shifted what the support is looking like at our school centers, where now we are doing what is called school-based student-facing support, where we spent first semester working directly there with the teachers, where we were modeling for instruction, modeling lessons, where we were coaching alongside with the teachers. Now they're actually working face-to-face with students, either in whole groups or providing small group instruction to students. So the kind of support that we're providing has just shifted, is what we have done when we're getting the data, in terms of looking at the data, to try to, again, make certain that our students are adequately prepared. I'm going to advance over to those slides, to the data slides, because as I said to you earlier, these slides are the slides we went through last month. Because what I wanted to do, I wanted to get directly to the mid-year instructional review component. And I'm sorry, I was going backwards, I'm sorry. So this is the slide that I actually wanted to get through, because we've gone through those data slides. Now that we went through those data slides at last month's meeting, and You know, if you want to give me a call if you were not able to meet last month's meeting to say, hey, I missed it, can you take me a little deeper in the slides? I am more than willing to do that. But for the intent of today's meeting is that we've had time, we had all the conversations last month around the data that we glanced through just to sort of get you back here. Now, what we're going to look at is that, okay, you've shown us the data. There are significant concerns that we have because it appears that we're still being stagnant in some areas. And then there are some areas to where we are making the growth. Share with us some of those highlights in regards to what is it that we're doing as a system that makes you all think that the data is going to continue to trend or will trend in the right direction. Now, I'm not going to read this to you verbatim, but what I am going to do, I am going to pull out some of those big bucket of pieces. Hopefully I can get through without the coughing. Again, excuse my voice here. I'm just dealing with a bad sinus. So as I talked about earlier, and I said to you, a common theme was going to be a lot around, you know, the professional development, really looking at the instructional pedagogy in terms of how we are supporting our teachers and the other key leaders there that are on the campus, and making certain that they have those support structures and things that they need there. You also heard me talk about, and Ms. Howard can lean into this, particularly around K2, K3, the work that we have been doing the entire year, and we're looking forward to continuing that work with the University of Florida next year because of the great feedback, that we are receiving as it pertains to really digging deep and working with our teachers and with them having and getting a clear understanding of what should be happening in small group instruction, what does that look like, and looking at those foundational skills for our students in K2 and in grades 3. And of course, embedded in that, it's going to talk about around the science of reading. And we know when we start talking about the science of reading, we're talking about, you know, the phonemic awareness, we're talking about the phonics, the fluency, the comprehension, and so forth. And most importantly, again, we also, you know, the initiatives that we've started also in working with our private providers as it pertains to, you know, our private 3-year-old, 4-year-old providers where our students are transitioning into kindergartens, where we started last year around the transition to kindergartners, where we've now providing the resources for our 4-year-olds to where, and providing them the T2K kits where it provides the family in regards to some resources and an understanding in regards to exactly what it is and what are the expectations for when our students are entered kindergarten, what skills they're expected to have. So we're trying to just build the bridge so that when our kids come to us, we can get them coming to us on and closing some of those gaps that we're noticing that they do not have. And so that's another area in which we've started on. Well, I try to, and then also there are some pieces that we're also doing in terms of, again, I talked around, you know, the collaborative pieces that we're doing with, you know, with the principal supervisors and making certain that we are speaking the same language, we are using the same lens. And in terms of, we're not holding back in regards to if it's not happening, then what is it that we need to do to go there to make sure that it's happening. But what I am wanting to do, because you can tell I'm trying to get my voice here, I'm going to ask Ms. Howard, I'm going to stop for a minute and ask Ms. Howard to just talk a little bit around that K2 piece with the University of Florida that we're doing around the literacy. Ms. Howard.
Good evening, everyone. What Dr. Sheffield was sharing so far was correct. We started this partnership with the University of Florida and working with teachers in the K2 classrooms. We identified 11 of our, I would say, our most intensive schools that the data revealed that they may need the most support in regards to professional learning for their teachers. So we also duplicated that work with 32 other elementary schools. So we've trained over 600 educators, agnostic of whatever program we're using in the classroom, that those teachers have the skills to teach small group instruction and those foundational literacy skills. What's not mentioned here too is that when you're doing professional learning, the important piece of it is the monitoring piece. So we have made an effort to make sure that we have followed up with the principals with debrief meetings after every training. And also, we conducted lab sites with the University of Florida where the teachers received one-on-one coaching and actually got to see it in action. And we're duplicating that work with 32 other elementary schools where our specialist from the curriculum department is doing that exact same work. It is our hope that we can continue this work for next year, so we can continue to give teachers the skills that they need. The teachers, as far as feedback, has been very positive. They have really appreciated actually learning some skills and having that type of support. Definitely when we make the shift for some of those teachers that are younger to the science of reading. And even some of our experienced teachers who seem to know everything, and I give them credit, they embrace the new learning that took place. So we're really looking forward to continuing this work. We trained, again, like I said, over 600 teachers. We're in the planning stages for increasing and continuing this work for next year, but not leaving any teacher unturned. So we will go back to some of those schools whether they weren't allowed to attend the training, because we do kick it off in July with a 3-day intensive training with UF, and so we plan on doing that again. So I'm just excited about continuing that work. One of the things that we are going to do, and it's not on here, as Dr. Sheffield hit on the transition to kindergarten, we are going to collaborate with the ELC and our pre-K teachers with kindergarten teachers so they can have some vertical planning as to what the expectations are for a kindergarten and making sure those pre-K teachers understand that work. With that, I think that's about it. Is there anything else I should have?
No, thank you, Ms. Howard. Allow me time to, and I think we're going to have to tag team here.
Okay.
Just because my voice, just for my voice here. And I think you did say that the work that we're doing and that our teachers are going through, because we're really honing in around those foundational skills, is that more importantly, that it's not just our teachers, but district staff is also participating in that training.
Yes.
To where we'll be able to do more of a train the trainer. But Ms. Golden? Ms. Sherrill?
Yes, can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes.
It says in the presentation, create the T2K ambassador, private, public-private. What is that a part of what you did last month, or is this something, because I don't remember that at all.
Okay, well, no, what you got last month is that you just saw the data. What this is here,
Okay.
these slides here is around how we're responding to the data that was reviewed. So, you know,
What is that ambassador?
the ambassador program, there are four part-time ambassadors through our early childhood department with Mrs. MJ Steele. And what those ambassadors are, they're actually working with our families that are maybe on vouchers that are participating in our VPK program that will be transitioning to kindergartners. And so those families, as they're identified, the ambassadors that we have, they're just working very closely and making certain that those families, we are continuing to provide them the resources that they may need, that we become aware of, and just ensuring the success of our students. So they're working. The ambassadors are employees here. They're part-time, and they're a liaison between the district, the Early Learning Coalition, who provides the vouchers to our families, and we look for resources that our families may be in need of.
Okay, all right. So that would help with, as far as, I remember years ago, you guys used to go out in the community and talk to actual parents and see what
Yes,
they needed.
that's
So
exactly
that is
what they do.
Okay, all right. Okay.
We're bringing those ambassadors back to try to have,
Yeah.
to have that bridge for us between the district, ELC, and the family.
Great. That, I'm sure that will help, because that was that program was so good. That program really helped a lot of families.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Ms. Fitchburn, Rachel.
Yes, I think it's in the PowerPoint, but I just wanted to confirm. This training that's happening, is that happening to reading specialists and also ESE teachers, or just the classroom teachers right now?
We worked collaboratively with not only the ESE department, but as well as ELL. So their staff went through the training with the specialists from the curriculum department this summer. So we made sure that all students and all teachers will be involved. So when we invite schools, anyone who touches K through second grade students are invited to attend the training and be trained.
And Rachel, thank you for that question. Thank you for that, because also what we have done, because we've really spent some time this year in making certain that we have our, particularly because ESE is a part of the academic, is on the academic side where Kevin is a part of our team. ELL works directly there with Keith, but we also reaches out and invite ELL to the table as well to work directly with us. So when we are having our curriculum meeting and so forth, it is important that we have, Kevin will have his designee, his curriculum person, the same with ELL, to where we all are collaborating and are at the table at the same time and being inclusive of all students. A prime example is just last week, the state released their dates for gave us our slots for our state summer trainings. Well, it was important to me in regard to the number of seats that they provided to us, is that making certain that we reach out and make certain that we have our ESE academic team that has been selected by Mr. McCormick, and the same thing with ELL, to where the teams can travel together and spend time, and I think they're going to be in Orlando, but spend time during the summer when we are doing and taking a deeper dive in terms of looking at the standards, looking at these benchmarks and making decision around action planning. We are doing that and being inclusive of all students at the same time, because we realize those strategies can meet the needs of all students.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you. I had a follow-up question. So we're looking at the data, and I know this year the dyslexia screener is now the STAR assessment, which you're using for K through 2 to determine, the issues, and you're using that to track the data and the progress. Has there been any written protocol if a child does not do well in the STAR for instruction at this time? Is there a set pathway that child is supposed to do, or is that up to the individual schools at this time?
I don't know if I understand the question. Can you repeat the question, because I want to make sure I understand what you're asking.
So at this point, I know that we were using the STAR early literacy as a benchmark for K through 2. And there's a lot of data points in there, like, for example, rapid naming and phonemic awareness and phonics. And it's now required by law for you to be used as a dyslexia screener. So if a child in K through 2 fails or shows, not fails, but shows indication that they possibly could be dyslexic, like it's a screener that it says, what is the protocol for the teacher at that point? What have they been told what they should do next? And should that child get evaluated for a learning disability? Are they going into a special type of intervention program? What is the protocol now that we have this indicator that tells someone is screened and has a positive screening for dyslexia? I'm wondering if anything has been developed as of now.
Okay, so nothing has been developed on the state end as far as if a child does show some deficiencies, but when students score in a certain proficiency rate in that assessment, it is recommended that we start those tier interventions. So we no longer wait for another data point or anything to come. We use that assessment, and they are supposed to, at that point, start intervention if deemed needed for the student.
Mm-hmm. So at that point, it should be automatic if they screen. Okay, yep. And are they using a UFly program in that intervention? What is UFly? You said that regardless of the program taught in the school, that they're coming in and do. So I don't know what this actual UFly program is. Like, how is it helping?
Okay,
What
I
does it
didn't mention UFly at all. We're doing
Okay.
Lassinger work. UFly is an approved intervention that we use within the district. If the school deems that that is the intervention that best meets the needs of that child, then they may use that intervention. But I can't say that for every school that that would be the path that they would actually take.
What program are they using right now, you said?
Rachel, if you can pause for a second, because I'm reading the room a little bit, and I think there's so much more to the presentation. If we can hold that hold that question and allow the presenters to finish the presentation, and it may get to your question. I think it might not be part of this presentation, but I do want them to finish the presentation, and within the presentation, there might be some areas that can answer some of your question or lead you to a different pathway within that same questioning.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. And again, that was just some of the work and great conversation, of course, around the literacy within K-5. But I think before we go on, before I leave this slide, Dr. Swiner, did you want, and I know that we're seeing our data shift, of course, in the right direction there at the secondary level. And I know our schools were having tremendous success with StudySync and then with no red ink in terms of some of the adjustments that we've made with secondary. Did you have anything you wanted to share in regards to the work that's being done with secondary?
I think all I would like to share about that is that this year has been a more focused and concerted effort through collaboration with the various departments, whether that be ESE, whether that be multicultural, in terms of really setting the groundwork for the expectations of product use, whether that's StudySync, as you mentioned, whether that's no red ink, and really embracing the use and really using best practices. You mentioned one of the things that we focused on this year was professional learning. So we developed a teacher leader cohort this year where each school sent a designee where they would learn collaborative practices with teachers from across the county to really dig deeply into the content itself, best practices for implementation of the materials, and best practices for pedagogy. So that way, when they go back to their school site, they can not only utilize those strategies, but then also share those within their PLCs. And I think that has a huge effect on the data that we're seeing and why we see just really a lot of teachers being able to do cross-curricular planning and be able to have a more unified vision for implementation within their school sites.
And then I'm not going to, when I go through these next few slides, you're going to see opportunities for growth is definitely a theme throughout, because the next piece that we'll look at will be math, because it's math, science, and social studies. But what I want to say, when you see opportunities for growth and you're reading your slides and it talks about funding, I do not want you to think that funding is not there. Funding is there. What we're saying around the funding opportunities and why we have it under opportunities for growth is making certain that the funding that have been provided to us, that we are making certain that we are doing our due diligence in, again, in the monitoring and holding tight and making certain that what we're utilizing that is meeting the needs of all students and so forth. So I just point that out because, you know, someone said earlier is that, are you all really not receiving the funding? No, we're receiving the funding. We just want to make certain that the funding that we're receiving and how it is being utilized, that it's being utilized to meet the needs of all students, and it's just not where we are buying stuff. So we are being very intentional and deliberate about how we're spending the funding. And then when we get on to this next slide here around to responding to some of the math data, you're going to again hear a common theme when you look at this slide around the work that we're doing around professional development. This year, we're really excited about, you know, Dr. Swiner and some other key district staff and regional staff is participating in a year-long cohort with TNTP Impact Florida, which is working directly there with the state and some other districts, to where we're really looking at what we call the math focus cadre, and what that is and why we really got excited and we decided to participate when Impact asked us about it, is that they're working together to really look at from kindergarten up to grade 9, because this is not unique to Palm Beach County. why is there such a gap in our students to by the time they get to 9th grade, our students do not have those foundational math skills that they need for Algebra 1. And we know Algebra 1 is a gatekeeper. It will keep our students from graduating high school. So we've spent just about the entire year. Dr. Swiner is part of that team. She reports out, and I actually think that they were here today, working in regards to creating a plan and to have deep conversations in regards to those kind of shifts that's needing to take place. So, and I point that out because it's not that we see the data, we continue to do the same thing, you're going to continue to get the same results. At what point do you stop? And it's what you call looking at the root cause analysis, and not constantly working in triage. We know with literacy, we really need to look at those foundational skills. Like why are we having such a hard time by the time our students get to us in grade 3? Well, you don't wait till the students get to grade 3 to try to teach them to read. We know those foundational skills from when our students enter us day 1, even before they enter us. That's why this transition to kindergarten and us building these positive relationships with our private providers is important to us, because that's us really and truly honing in, looking at those foundational skills. And that's what we're doing here with the math as well. Also, we've gotten great feedback. We've asked the superintendent this year, for additional funding around our ACE, AP, IB training to where we can do what is called roundtable discussions for our teachers, bringing those teachers in, having roundtable discussions in terms of digging deep, looking in terms of what is it that because we realize we've opened up and widened, in regards to the number of students that were coming into the accelerated coursework. But as we were widening the number and increasing the number of students that were coming and participating in accelerated coursework, we wanted to make certain and ensure that those students had success. So we spent a lot of time, and we needed additional funding to work with teachers to where teachers understood in regards to, and some of it was just having that efficacy training and working with them around efficacy, having that sense of belief to where some students that are coming into your ACE, your AP, or your IB, to where their learning is going to be different. So you're going to have to differentiate in your accelerated coursework just as if you would have to differentiate in a non-accelerated coursework. Because many times when our students are in those accelerated coursework, we tend to think that we are the facilitators and that they should be able to do this work on their own without that kind of assistance. And that's not necessarily the case. It's providing them the opportunity, having that sense of efficacy and belief, and giving them that chance. So we've spent a lot of time in PD around working with our teachers and understanding in regards to the unique opportunities that we have been providing to our students. Eva, did you want to add anything to that? Yes, I will.
At this time, we'll pause for the questions leading up to this point as it relates to the presentation. Ms. Feldman, you're recognized.
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions, both on this slide and the last slide. One of the opportunities mentioned was the having enough access to appropriate instructional material. Is there an issue with there are teachers and students who do not have access to appropriate instructional material?
No, what we're saying is that we want to make certain that we're continuing in every opportunity, and when we're observing, we should be observing, like you look in the celebration on this particular slide, that second line says implementation of the district-wide walkthrough tool. The first item on that walkthrough tool is that anytime we go in and we observing and we're walking, we should make certain that the materials in front of students is high quality instructional materials. It should not be something that we are printing from, A to Z or, Teacher Talk or some of the websites and so forth, to where they're not aligned to standards and the depth of knowledge is not there for our students. So we're just making and being intentional that we want to make certain at all times that our students have high quality instructional materials in front of them. We're being committed to that, Laura. That's what that is saying.
So I guess if it were worded that ensuring the continuation of all students and teachers having access to appropriate instructional material might be more clear, because you're ensuring the continuation of that, as opposed to this, the way it's written, it does sound like this is brand new. And that's what caught my eye. So I'm glad to hear that the material is there and you're just looking to ensure that it will continue to be there. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. And then with, okay, so you mentioned the need for differentiated instruction within the AMP program, and that to help make sure that teachers are aware that that is a need to implement. Is there, I've got a number of questions. So the first question is, the process for identifying students for the AMP program, have you found that to be successful as is? Do any of the metrics need to be changed? And I'm assuming the AMP program has been successful in terms of making sure that students have the knowledge they need to continue all the way through 9th grade, and beyond within math.
No, I don't think that. I think we have done a great job in terms of providing more access to our students, because there are students that probably, if we had not taken the time to look in regard to students not having access, because I think we've held it so tight. And now that we have really worked alongside with our schools, and, with our principals and with our teachers, and putting those pieces in place to provide the opportunities for those students that may not have, where those opportunities may not have been provided, and the data shows that those students can be successful, I don't think that there's a problem identifying the students.
That's great. And then within, it's good to hear. I'm glad that it's been successful. I think it's a wonderful idea to have this, and I think it could possibly be useful for other subjects as well for students. Has there been any analysis of the impact of math anxiety on students' difficulty in achieving math, meeting the math goals that we have?
Have we done a study on math anxiety?
Yes, math anxiety and dyscalculia. Has that been a factor that's been taken into account?
Eva, you want to talk on?
So part of the research that we're doing in the partnership with TNTP and Impact Florida is not only just looking at the instructional materials and assessments, but it's also taking the time to do teacher surveys as well as student surveys into their experience in mathematics, both teaching and then the students learning. And so we have definitely begun that work in looking at the impacts of mathematical identity and success rates as it relates to either acceleration or just achievement in general. And so we're starting to see some trends in terms of just experience and the components of pedagogy that are present, and to how some positively impact math identity more than others. So for example, we're seeing patterns and trends in collaboration leading to a higher mathematical identity, and that less of that stress that you're seeing, because they're getting ready to be able to learn how to collaborate with one another, to be able to identify their best practices in learning, and then share that strength in being able to turn to a peer and then say, this is what worked for me, here's how I got the answer that I got, and that builds that kind of self-confidence in that math identity. And so we're still digging into that work and looking at the impact, because a large part of this research is looking at longitudinal data. We're going back 10 years to see the patterns and trends in the data that has happened and arisen over the course of time, and what that leads to in terms of implementation and effects on Algebra 1 over the long term.
That's wonderful to hear. So I have a follow-up question to that and one more question. So as part of that, what is the time frame for the for when you'll have, you did talk about it being longitudinal. So the first set of data you're expecting to have by when?
So we're currently in the works of developing our implementation plan. This year was focused on completely being a planning year, looking at root cause analysis, identifying potential grade levels where we want to start prototyping a potential support program that leads to higher efficacy over time. And so we would begin this summer at looking at some potential prototypes with either schools or specific grade levels where we want to start this work, and then scaling that over time.
I just want to pause for just a minute because we are halfway through the presentation, and I feel like if we stop at every PowerPoint, we are not going to get through the presentation. So I'm going to ask that if we can please hold the question. I know I had asked staff, but I don't think it's going to be fair to not hear the entire conversation and the entire presentation. So if we can hold off the questions until the end of the presentation, this allows all presenters to complete their thoughts and complete the presentation. I know it's kind of hard, but looking at the time, I don't think we're going to get through the presentation if we stop at every PowerPoint. If there is no objection to hold the questions, if the body will entertain that for me so that we can really hear the conversation and have our questions
I'll hold
ready.
my last question.
Thank you. Are there any objections? Hearing none, thank you. You may proceed.
And then before we leave this particular slide here, I did want to point out, and again, we didn't go through each bullet, each item here, but I did want to point out one thing for this year as well, because it was part of that House Bill 7039. It was similar to our reading intervention that we have, where we have to have that reading intervention handbook, the decision tree, and so forth. Well, what we've done this year is that we've developed a K-4 math intervention handbook. It was not required. What the House Bill 7039 indicated is that now for math students any student in reading K-4 math student, as soon as the student has been identified in terms of having a deficiency, we should notify the parent. But what we have done, we took it a step further, and the math team really worked alongside with the reading team and being really intentional in regards to the work that we were doing and providing the support for those students that have been identified. So I do want to, say thank you to Dr. Swanner, because she leads up that math team in terms of just working closely with the reading team to where we were able to provide this resource for our K-4 math teachers. And in the area of science, again, with science, you saw some of the success that we've had there with science. One piece that we did do, again, outside continuing with the professional development and so forth, what we did try, what we started last year was what was called an SLA, which is Science Leadership Academy. And there was a group of schools that were identified based on their data that participated in a year-long PD in terms of, again, working directly there with those teachers, enhancing their instructional pedagogy. And every school that participated saw tremendous growth within their within their students last year on their end-of-year assessment. Because of the growth that those schools saw last year, now we had more schools wanting to participate in this Science Leadership Academy. So when you see these kind of things and you see the impact that it's having not just on our teachers but on our students, then of course it just gives you that excitement. So we're continuing. We're in year 2 of this science K-5 Science Leadership Academy because of the progress in which we've seen. We've also this year we started. Again, Dr. Swanner and that team, they wrote a grant, and it was approved, where we've have this CPERCH, which is the underwater robotics program. And it was our first time this year, and we have one school, Park Vista High School. There are 26 schools that signed up to participate in it, wanting to give the students that experience underwater robotics. And for our first time doing it, with the 26 schools, Park Vista has been invited to participate at the international level, right? So again, where the don't tend to talk about the great things that are happening within the system. We just hear those things that are not going so well. But we are in the business of educating, all students. So there are definitely some opportunity gaps that we have, and I know that we're closing them. It's just that at some point, you had to just do that hard stop to say you have to deal with the root cause. And for literacy, the root cause is really and truly looking at what's happening with those foundational skills. And so I'm really excited about the work that we're doing. And I know that it's going to take time, and we're definitely going to see the progress there. Dr. Swiner, is there anything else can you think of in regards to science in terms of the work that we're doing there?
I think the only other important thing to mention is that we developed a common language of expectations for instruction for this year. We haven't had necessarily a change in our standards, and so we wanted to make sure that we weren't lulled into this complacency, and that we were really ensuring that we were putting high-quality instructional materials in front of our students. We did undergo the instructional materials adoption this past summer, and so we've selected 3 different texts that are before the board. We're just pending the DOE approval of the texts to be able to move forward with those materials, but we developed a secondary science look-for. So then that way, no matter who you are walking those science classrooms, that you have the same expectation of excellent science instruction happening in our classrooms.
Thank you, Dr. Swiner. And then, of course, the last slide here, and we'll be, I definitely want to leave some time for questions, is around social studies. Now, with social studies, we did have some new standards in social studies, particularly there in civics, and of course, financial literacy. The 9th grade students that started this year, entering in 24, this is the class to where those students must have a half credit of financial literacy before they can graduate. So we have successfully created a financial literacy pathway to ensure that those students will meet that requirement by the time they graduate. You heard me say earlier in regards to we do not talk about the great things that are happening. Where this is now in legislation, I have to tell you, Palm Beach County, we were ahead of the state in this one because we'd already had a team of 2 that was dedicated to financial literacy. Mr. Aaron Standish and his team member. And Aaron actually worked alongside with the state in helping them develop some of the work there for financial literacy when it became and went into statute. So we're definitely ahead of the game here. And, we had many schools that were already providing this opportunity to our students. So, kudos to to Aaron and the team for the great work that they have done around that. Also, here when we talk about, the continuation of our teachers, you could see here, this is year 2 that the state has what is called the Civic Seal of Excellence Teacher Training Program as a scholar program for our civic teachers. If they successfully complete that training program with the state, I think they get a stipend of about $3,000. But again, it's not just about the $3,000. It's an actual professional development opportunity to where it's enhancing their skills. So, and I think that's also contributing to the progress that we're seeing within our teachers in that area there of social studies. Eva, is there anything else you want to add in regards to social studies outside of the common themes?
The only other thing to add would be that we have done tremendous work this year in really evaluating the rewrites to the civics and U.S. history standards that the state had put forth. And really, we have done a fantastic job at not only looking at our scope and sequence and integrating those new benchmarks languages, but also making sure that our assessments mirror those same changes so that when the students are getting ready to be assessed on those new benchmarks, that they're ready for that.
Thank you. And Eva, talking around in regards to the assessment, and I know just today I was providing some feedback to the TEIs that we were putting out to our teachers. Do you want to talk in regards to what they are?
Yeah. So the state does have sample test items. So as we know, we made the shift to an adaptive test platform for math and for ELA, and then we're also doing that this year with multiple choice, but it's still a digital access for social studies and for science. And so we wanted to make sure that our students were prepared for the variety of questions they might see. And so the state had a sample test available for the students to engage in that way. But our assessment team, in collaboration with our department, kind of went above and beyond and created sample test items so that the students can practice a variety of different item types so that they can be better prepared. And the Department of Communications also worked to develop a video for students by students to get them ready for what they were going to see on that digital assessment this year.
Thank you, Eva. And then the last piece, because I see that, Madam Chair, we have quite a few hands up, but the last piece here, because I know they are excited, they're ready. This here was just the data the graduation data that we went over last time. So before, so I skipped the graduation slides. So what we did there, we responded to just talking about some of the work that we are doing around ELA, math, science, and social studies. Those were the 4 big areas. But what I want to assure you is that this kind of work is not just with ELA, math, science, and social studies. We're being intentional about all content areas. About all of our content areas. You know, if I were to ask Ms. Howard to talk about, you know, the work that's happening within fine arts and so forth, because that's another area that falls within her, she would be able to talk about that and so forth. So I just wanted to point that out. But before we go on, and then I share with you in regards to the work that we're doing this summer to continue the learning, you heard me say earlier that a large part of this was, okay, post-ESSER, these dollars are gone. We're all in budget meetings now. In regards to those positions or what have you, there will no longer be, you know, these individuals will now be back into classrooms. They'll be working directly there with students. They're going to be some of the best teachers they are, because I'm sure they have learned a lot. Well, this slides here just talk about how we're going to be able to continue the work and a lot of what you've heard this evening around around those common themes. And a big one here, you heard us talk a lot about professional development, the instructional pedagogy of our teachers, you know, high quality instructional materials and so forth. So when you talk around the increasing of student achievement, that professional development is crucial. You hear them talk about, you know, the cadre trainings, the content clinic trainings. These are the trainings to where, you know, we set up based in regards to the scope and sequence. The teachers they know their lesson plans, they know the scope. If they're wanting to attend some cadre trainings or content trainings to help onboard them for the upcoming lessons, if they're a little nervous about it, they need some, you know, they need some additional support there, they can attend those trainings. Some of those trainings are in person, some of them are virtually. Also, we're going to be able to go back and continue with the modeling and coaching support, where I'm going to model the instruction for a teacher in terms of what a good lesson will look like, depending on what kind of assistances that they need. Then the teacher is going to then teach that lesson, and I will coach them up if that's what's needed. And then, of course, we talk around the PLCs, the professional learning communities. The team already goes out. They already meet with the teachers in their professional learning communities to where they're planning for instruction, and they're digging deep, looking at the root cause and helping them plan if that is what they need, if that's what they're in need of. And then the second part talks around the systems in terms of like what are some of the systems that we need to make certain that we are holding tight here as a district. You heard us talk around, you know, the standard-based classroom walkthrough tool, meaning that we're using that standard walkthrough tool to where everyone that is walking and providing support and coaching, we're speaking the same language and we know exactly what it is that we're looking for. I call it the 3 T's. You know, I talk about, you know, the text, the task, and the talk. You know, the text, is it high quality instructional material? The task, what does it look like? Is it aligned to the standard and so forth? The engagement, is the student engaged into their learnings and so forth? In terms of what should a true classroom look like when we're entering and looking for enhanced instruction? And again, you hear me talk about the root cause analysis and not being afraid to talk about the root cause and provide those constructive feedback in regards to what it is that we think that needs to take place. Because if you don't dig deep, we're going to continuously put on the Band-Aid. Right? And that's why I'm so excited about the work that we're doing around that K2 piece in terms of looking and with the transition to kindergartners and having those ambassadors out there working with our families. Because that's what I consider root cause, looking at the foundational skills and start there. And then, of course, this last one is very important here. We have a grant where we're going to be able to, working with Mr. McCormick, to where we're going to actually be able to put what I called an expert for school-based team in each of the regions, because if we can get and have model school-based teams on all of our campuses to where they understand that MTSS framework and so forth, that's going to help us really and truly look for put those multi-tiered systems and things in place to help us properly subgroup our planning to address the academic needs for our students, whether it be their social skills, whether it be academics or their behavior. That MTSS piece is very important. And then, of course, that last bullet for us around the instruction, the high-quality instruction material, it is there. Not saying that it's not, it is there, but we're making certain that if we go in and we see to where the material is not high quality, that the material is not standard-based, it is not aligned to the standard, that we're okay pulling those materials and explaining the why and showing what high-quality instruction materials look like. And, of course, continuing to provide our aligned scope and sequence, our curriculum resources, and of course, our FSQs and our unit assessments. Those are our formative and summative assessments. And when we look at this particular slide here, what it really and truly reminds me of is what I call the FCIM model. It's the Florida Continuous Improvement Model, the Plan, Do, Act, Check, where we are planning for instruction. We're planning for the instruction. Now that we have planned for it, we're going to go ahead and deliver the instruction. Once we've delivered it, we're going to then provide the assessment to see where our students are. And based on what the data is showing us, we're going to alter our instruction and differentiate based on what the data is telling us and going back and reteach, remodel, or do whatever it is to ensure the success of our students and our teachers. And that's, and that's the approach that we are taking in regards to really looking at the root cause in terms of how do we move forward. And from there, Madam Chair, the last part to this, I'll get this mouse down pat before I leave this evening. The last part of this, again, I just created the slide, and I think I'd already provided this to you all, is in regards to the work that we will continue to do. And Ms. Howard is our contact person for summer. I know she loves it. She's our summer school. She's our summer school lead. And, we have our VPK Head Start programs, of course. Their date starts a little early, ends a little later, because they have to put in more hours. And then, of course, for elementary, we'll have our Rising Stars, and we have our Summer Reading Academy for grade 3. Those students that did not, that scored a level 1, they're on their on their state assessment, Progress 3, Monitoring 3. And then for middle school is the only area to where they will only be open for 3 weeks. Middle school course recovery will be for 3 weeks, and the reason that's for 3 weeks is that middle school course recovery runs the entire year. It runs the entire year, so they will have 3 weeks over the summer to finish up those students that may be lacking their quality points there. And then we're also doing a 3 weeks math academy. And that 3 weeks math academy there is those 7th grade foundational math skills for our students that are really struggling with those leaving 6th grade coming into 7th. But then in working with our schools, the schools are going to get really, really creative in working with Ms. Swiner, because some are already saying, 7th is great, but there is something else that I may want to do alongside with that. But our middle schools will have their 3 weeks program, the school course recovery and the 3 weeks math academy. Our high schools will be open all summer, the entire time, June 10th through the 17th, all of our high schools. Reason being, Mr. Collins, I'm sure you get this one, that graduation support and driver's ed. We know graduation support, you have that Edgenuity group in there. Those students, the seniors now, They had some hiccups. They did not graduate in May. We tried to graduate them this summer to get them through their cohort. Then another part to that is going to be our juniors, the class of 25. They have not yet passed their state test in terms of their reading test, that algebra. So those students will be doing ACT, SAT, or that CLT prep to try to get their concordance scores. So we need them to be on their campuses because those are our most fragile students, and we want them to be with individuals to whom they've built relationships with. And then, of course, we have driver's ed. And then on our cluster sites, we will have our ESY, our ESOL, and our migrant programs. So, Madam Chair, I know that was a mouthful. That was a lot this evening, but I just felt that we showed you all the data last time, and didn't give you an opportunity to just talk about how we're responding to some of the data.
That was a lot, and you have a lot of hands, and we have 15 minutes, so please mindful of the time. At this time, I am going to entertain questions in the order that I have on our computer, as well as for the speakers who had not spoken yet. So please limit your time to 2 minutes. I am going to time because we want to give everybody an opportunity to talk. And at any moment, if anyone wants to entertain a motion to extend time, you have the floor to interrupt. So in the order of Christine, Tibbetts, Dr. Mendez, Amran, and Randy, those are the first four. Christine, you have the floor. Christine, can you hear us? If you can, I'll go to Dr. Mendez and then come back to
I'm
you.
sorry, I don't think I raised my hand. If it's raised, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. Not a problem. Dr. Mendez.
Yeah, I think my question would be a bit long for tonight. So I will see if we can address that next time, and it has to do with what is expected of us when we just receive presentations. How we're supposed to advise, and I'm not sure what our role is if we just listen to. So it's something that we can think and consider for next time. And the other thing is, like, I completely agree with the presenter that we had to celebrate the good things, and I really appreciate all the professional development that the district is doing along with UF. Now, I feel a bit offended when we're presenting like we should celebrate the state professional development that pays teachers $300, but tells teachers things like there are some good things about the slavery, or the kind of professional development that does history, changes history. I'm not celebrating that. Just wanted to know, because like sometimes we say things and if we don't show that we disagree, we are quietly accepting that. I am not accepting that kind, or much less celebrating that kind of professional development. I just wanted to state that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mendez. If we have time at the end of the agenda, I would like to address your first part of the question, which I have already wrote down to address. But at this time, Imran.
Good evening. It was a very thorough presentation. I don't have any questions, but I am interested in hearing the conversation, so thank you.
Thank you. Randy.
I don't have my hand raised.
It's showing. I'm sorry. We went with the hands that were raised. So if you don't have your hand raised, just let me know. I'm so sorry. Sheila?
Okay.
I didn't raise my hand either.
What do you see? The blue things that's up there? Sherelle, did you have your hands raised? It must
No,
be
I
my
did not.
eyes at this time. I did have a question before I give the floor to Rachel and then Laura, since they have already spoke. One part of the questions you talked about root cause analysis, and I guess I can ask all of them because they all tie to the same thing that I'm going to say: root cause analysis and future strategic planning, standard-based classroom walkthrough, and professional development. So with all of those, one, part of that question is, who is part of the conversation? And two, how are substitutes, specifically long-term substitutes, part of these, or are they part of these walkthroughs or professional developments as it relates to long-term substitutes that are teaching some of the core classes because of the shortage of?
If there is a long-term substitute, then they are, because of course, when we're doing professional learning, like if we're going for a PLC and they're attending during, say if it's grade 5 ELA PLC, and if they are there because they're a long-term substitute, then they can participate.
Okay, so are they available to participate? Because from what I have seen on school sites, once substitutes come in, they leave.
Well, it depends. A day-to-day substitute, no. Now, if it's a
long-term
long-term substitute, you know, because a long-term substitute, it could be there for 6 months, or it could have been a substitute that,
Right.
you know, what have you.
3 months.
They do have an opportunity to participate in the professional learning.
Okay.
But day-to-day substitute, no.
Are they aware of that?
Well, that's
Principal.
school-based. I
Okay.
would say principal, because we don't have any, that's not something we control. You know,
Right.
that's something that's managed there at the school site, because they know in terms of what their immediate needs are.
And I guess I brought that up because that is something, you know, as a formal substitute and still have the access to sub, there has been opportunities where myself personally was able to be a long-term sub, and we're not invited to that conversation. Well, I wasn't as long as some of the other ones that did the core classes. They're not invited to the trainings. They're not invited to the conversations when it comes to, you know, sometimes they don't have the instructional materials to teach. And these are core classes, so I just want to, you know, put that from the top level, from the district level to, you know, take back to maybe the principals, like, they may not know. I don't know if they know or not, but they may, whether they know or it is not enforced or it is not something that's in hindsight. But I think it will be beneficial for some of our classes, especially if it's a core class, because there are substitutes that are teaching in core class that are long-term as well. So it's not an answer. I'm not looking for an answer either. It's just something to put in the forefront. Rachel and then Laura.
I actually didn't have my hand raised, but now that you called on me, I had a quick question. Before, when I was cut off, when I was speaking, you were saying that UFly was not a program that you're using, but there's also another program you're using for the
No,
University of Florida.
Rachel.
So I was wondering what that was.
No, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Howard, then I'm going to, I just need to get another water. UFly, we do utilize UFly. We have, I think, 39 schools that utilizes it, but UFly, Spira, foundations, you know, just similar to any other research-based intervention program, it all depends in regards to what exactly is it the need of that child is. That's why we do have, there are various programs that are within our SERP that the schools could utilize, but I'm going to let Ms. Howard finish this. But I just jumped in real quick because I didn't want to say that we did not utilize UFly, because we do utilize UFly. I think we have 39 schools, Ms. Howard?
Yes.
39 schools. But Ms. Howard would jump in.
But thank you. Yes, Dr. Sheffield did answer. So I think what happens is there's a confusion when we mention University of Florida and the work that we're doing with the Lassinger Center. The Lassinger Center is a consultant. It's a consultant contract we have with them. And what I mentioned was the skills that they're providing for teachers, the professional learning opportunity, is agnostic of any program that the teacher may be using. So the skills that they learn in Lassinger, I'm not saying they can't use them if they utilize UFly for an intervention. Yes, they can. So it's.
So is the Lassinger Center that you're using, is that in all schools or just the 39, or is that across the board?
Right now, we kicked it off with 43 schools.
And that's elementary, middle, and high school, or
Nope,
just elementary?
that is just elementary. It is a K through second grade focus.
Okay, interesting. I'm going to Google it so I can learn more. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Laura, was your hands up? I promise you on this end, we can see your hands up, guys. I don't know what glitch we have in the system. Laura, you're recognized if your hands is up.
Thank you. My hand was up. So the last question that I had before was with this push to help students be ready for Algebra 1 in ninth grade, is there work to emphasize, I appreciate that there was mention earlier about the work to the findings, or at least the preliminary findings, that working on collaboration skills has been helpful to prepare students further and reduce anxiety with math. But is there work to emphasize problem-solving skills versus rote memorization?
Absolutely. With the new benchmarks, there is a higher focus on the real-world application of the content, and so much of the training that we engage in this year is on developing the skills of our teachers and making sure that we're getting to the depth and breadth of the rigor of the benchmark so that they are provided scenarios with a real-world context, that they are getting to deeper levels of thinking and understanding of the math, so that it's not just, while there is a place for fluency and there is a place for rote memorization, there are specific standards that call for the application of content. And so we're making sure that we are strategically addressing that in every professional learning that we offer.
Great. And I guess a follow-up question is, how are we bringing this information into the pre-K programs to help students be better prepared, because those math foundational skills are started during preschool, actually. And I remember reading some research that actually math skills in kindergarten are better predictors of future success in graduation than actual reading.
Yeah, that was actually part of the conversation today. We started looking at where we feel our biggest need is, and we're still digging into the data to kind of identify that. But there was a huge look into and discussion about how we work effectively with our pre-K and VPK offerings, similar to the way that literacy does, and developing strategies that might support our families in developing those skills, or our VPK programming, giving them specific skills that we would want to make sure that they have as they enter kindergarten, because, you know, it may be something as simple as a parent believing that all they have to do is identify a number, but right now the expectations entering kindergarten is so much more than that. And so really just communicating that not only with our providers, but also with our families.
Okay, because I appreciate that we came to this page, but I don't actually see the mention of the pre-K information on here. Maybe I've just missed it, but I see mentioning of K, but not pre-K.
No, Laura, I came to that page because what is not mentioned there is that we've started with VPK, with the Age of Learning, where we are doing where they started with the Early Learning Coalition, to where they have invested for all of our VPK classrooms, as well as the private providers, with the Age of Learning, their Mind Reading Academy. And for the upcoming year, what they're going to be looking at is also making that same kind of investment for VPK, for math, for our district VPK, as well, again, as our private VPK providers. This is the collaboration that we're doing, again, with Early Learning Coalition and the Age of Learning, to your point.
Okay, great. So, and they're not just working on number recognition, but they're working on, I'm assuming that they're also working on like sorting and categorizing and those other math skills.
Those are the standards, yes.
Yep, okay, great.
Mr. Collin, you're recognized.
I'm secondary. I'm secondary. I've always been secondary, but I've been volunteering at some of the elementary schools. What can the district do to help some of the principals deal with attendance? All of this stuff everybody's saying is fine, but if the children are not in school, they don't learn. And I'm finding out that particularly with our youngsters of color, that's a major, major issue. They're just not attending school. And we talked about incentives, and it's probably too late for this year, but what can the district do to help principals incentivize youngsters to
Well,
be in school?
Mr. Collins, we do have, under Mr. Oswald, he's over student services. Student services is under him, and he actually has a whole team with Amy Mazzocco. Amy Mazzocco is the manager that leads up his attendance team. So he has a team that's actually out there, and that's
Okay.
what they do.
Okay.
So I would say if you have a principal and there are some students that are not coming or some families that they need to have some direct contact with,
Okay.
I would refer her to Mr. Oswald so that he can connect her to Amy Mazzocco.
Okay.
Because we have an attendance team.
Okay. And next thing is, and I'll be through. I'm old school.
Do that, can I make a quick
Always been
motion
old
to
school,
extend by 10 minutes?
and I know it's about time to go.
Second the motion.
The state dictates how you teach timetables. You know, your timetable structure. Does the state dictate that?
Even you want to teach talking about your math.
Yeah.
So yes and no. The last set of standards that we were under called for an algorithm to be used. So that innately kind of said there's one way to attack a problem and only one way. This set of standards says that there are multiple ways to get to the same answer and actually encourages students to share their representations. And so you'll see multiple representations shown in a number of standards, including our multiplication, because depending on their grade level, some student might see it by using math blocks. Another one might just be able to do it, for lack of a better term, old school way by just writing it out linearly. And so the new set of standards kind of encourages that discourse amongst our students and showing the way that they find their problems, because if I'm asking you what 3 times 4 is, you might just see it in your head because you have that fluency, but I can see it in terms of a physical representation of blocks or a pattern of structure. So there's not a single way to solve the problem, but it is one of several ways to solve the problem.
I understood what you said. I guess I'm old school. The rote way that I was exposed to guided me through high school and then guided me through college. So I just, the rote way. I know things are different now. It's completely different.
It is one of several ways shown. So for those students that the rote way works, the rote way works and we're okay with it.
I mean, but how does the teacher, I'm trying to find this. How does a teacher know to do those different trying to find a nice way of
Strategies.
strategies
Uh-huh.
to be able to do that with it?
It's embedded into the actual instructional materials, the different ways to show the representation.
Okay. Because that will help your algebra tremendously. Old school.
Sherelle, did you have your hands up, Ms. Golden?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
So I wanted to speak on the guy that just spoke about attendance.
Mr. Collins.
So when you spoke about attendance and you said particularly color, do you have the data on that to support?
Well, I won't really want to get into the particulars.
Yeah. So no, let me finish. Let me finish my question. Okay. So when you generalize that, do you have data to support it's just color, or are you saying at your school you find it more common?
I really don't have a school. It's just that I volunteer from time to time.
Oh, okay.
And I
All right.
usually sometimes
That's okay. I'm finished with it. That you've answered my question. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Just to support him, the Hispanic Education Coalition receives assistant principals from different, assistant superintendents from different regions, and Dr. Pat, also Dr. Feliciano, and they show data with us, and they share data last year in terms of attendance and tardiness, and there is and the problem is greater with Hispanic students and African Americans or Black students, according to the data they showed.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So again, I know Mrs. Post Charmaine had to leave. I'm not sure if she's still on the call. Is she still on? I don't think she is on. So, Laura,
Hi, yes, I'd made a motion earlier to extend time by 10 minutes. That was at 7:15 PM. I heard, I believe, I'm not sure who else, but I did hear someone else second it.
I second it. It's Sherelle.
Okay, great, thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Do we
opposed?
have any more questions or?
well, we still have an
We
agenda.
also had on the agenda to discuss ideas for upcoming topics.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, so we still need it. Okay.
So that's the next 5 minutes, yes.
Right, so any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And so we have 5 more minutes, considering that motion was made at 7:15. So does anyone have any ideas for upcoming agenda topics that they'd like to present or hear about, talk about, discuss?
Yes, I'd like to know what the district is doing to address the use of generative AI by students because they're using it. And how they basically, how is the district training teachers on this? What policies are there, if there are any policies? How are they supporting teachers and schools and administrators on this topic?
Okay, so we have, so you're looking at both how it's included within the curriculum in a positive way, as well as how to ensure that it's not being a tool for some form of abuse and.
That's my philosophy about this, but I just want to know how the district is addressing this in regards with curriculum.
Okay,
What is
because
the
I mean, part of it
district-
is, I mean, this is a whole new industry, well, slightly new.
Exactly, yeah.
Right, so we have the potential of students who could go into this as a career focus, as well as, how do we make sure students are doing the learning that they need to do?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there are many, many ways of addressing this issue. That's why I wanted to know how the district is addressing it, if it is.
Great, so if we could add that to the list, is there anyone else with any other ideas?
I would also like to review the roles of the members of this committee and the role of the committee. Because I joined not too long ago, but so far the only thing I saw is that the district brings presentations and we listen and we ask questions. And to me, that's a bit different from advising. So I would like to include a discussion on the role of the committee in the district.
Certainly, I would assume that would be possible. Part of historically how this committee has given that advice is sometimes through learning and understanding what is first learning and understanding what is happening in the district, and then with getting that information or by virtue of what questions are asked, that that gives feedback to the district staff, and information is brought back to our school board members on particular areas of whether it could be an area of concern or area of praise, and that through that system and conversation, we're able to give that advice. There have been a few times over the years, not many, when the committee has actually passed a motion that is then making a statement of specific advice that is presented to the school board during the during the school board meetings, the monthly school board meetings. But I certainly think going over that could be useful, as we do have some newer members.
Thank you.
So I do have a couple of ideas myself. One is to talk about the efforts that are being made to prepare to adjust the school days to the new school start times I can't remember if it starts in the school year 2025 or 2026. But if we could talk about that. Another thing that was mentioned a few years ago would be, as we've seen success in the AMP program for math, is to take a look at whether or not we want to expand that program so it's not focused solely on math, but instead also including, for example, language arts or social studies and science, to really tap into where we can help our students excel and accelerate when it's appropriate. Also, another topic which I think could be very interesting, which would be focused on dyscalculia, the efforts the school district is doing to ensure that students are diagnosed appropriately or at least identified as being at risk for that, as well as math anxiety. And I do appreciate that the Florida program, the UF program, is working within that. So, which brings me to, from what I understood from today's presentation, that the UF math program is completing their planning year this year. So perhaps towards the end of this school year, we could hear, or maybe the beginning of next, but we could hear a summary of what the findings have been during the planning and what therefore the plans are going to be for the implementation for the following year. And one of the slides earlier today mentioned an extended elementary school day. So I was hoping we could hear more information about that. And someone mentioned a concern about absenteeism. And I think that that might be a good topic as well for a future meeting.
Laura, excuse me, Vice Chair. Do you realize we only have 2 meetings?
Okay, so no, I had not put time into my head. So
April
maybe
and May.
Carry over to next year.
So I think right now, I think the priority would be for the agenda items for April and May. For April and May, I'm thinking. But of course, I'll leave it to the will of, for the will of the committee. Because we're having a long list here, so I would think that the committee would want to prioritize for April and May.
Right, but I figured with this long list, we could do that prioritization for these 2 meetings and then carry over other ideas for the beginning of next year.
Okay, so can we, because I have 7/28, so can we at least get to April and May? Right,
so next time, if we did that description of the role of the committee, I think for a small part of the next meeting, plus would there be something ready? Is the school start times, later school start times for 2025 or for 2026?
That's for 2026.
Okay, so let's deal with that next year.
Okay.
And the program planning year information, the summary of that, would that be ready by May, or would that be better off?
Are you talking about the math focus? The K-9 math focus? That will be continuing. That concludes in May. So you will have to have the committee, the group will be doing their, they'll be doing their wrap up.
Okay, so that sounds like that could be a good way to start off next year.
Okay.
And what was my head's blanked out from
AI, artificial
AI.
intelligence.
Is that something that could be ready for April or May, or not really?
Yes, it can.
Okay, that'd be great. And Christine, you raised your hand?
Yes, sorry, I don't mean to throw another item out here, especially since we're over the extended time. I was just wondering if it would be available to do a quick update on the VPK enrollment for this upcoming school year, just to, if you have any quick numbers of which schools are already, I don't know, getting a bunch of applications or filling all their spaces and which ones
For
really
VPK?
haven't gotten any. Yes.
VPK? Sure, that will be, I sit on the board for early learning, so that will be, I will definitely be able to do that, and I'll work with MJ, my director for early childhood.
Yeah, I know that kindergarten's doing, did their round of enrollments and everything. Just wondering if it was ready for April or May.
Okay. And what I'll do with that one, I'll just do the VPK enrollment for FY '25, and then I'll ask them to just add on in terms of how we are doing with the transition to kindergarten, because the open house starts, I think we kick off registration for transition to kindergarten. I think we kick that off April, I think it kicks off April 17th, but I'll add the transition to kindergarten to the VPK enrollment.
That sounds great.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
So are we best off doing that one in April or in May?
No, I'll do it in April, because, I mean, they've done great work, so I think they could just talk about what we've done leading up to our next meeting and kicking off the registration. I think it starts April 17th, and it may start a week early. Don't quote me on my date, because April 17th is in my head, because that is the district-wide registration day for, aftercare. Because, last year we opened up aftercare for registration on the same day. So we're doing that again this year, and April 17th is that date. Parents have an opportunity to register for aftercare. I think it opens up at 6 p.m. on that day.
Okay, great. And then could we do the AI in May?
You want to do AI in May? Okay, so for April, the role
Unless
of,
anybody else has a different topic they want to cover in May.
I mean, we can do the AI in April, because the role of the academic advisory, that's not going to take long, because we did that in August. Because remember, that's how we always kick off our meetings, at the beginning of the year, where we provide the bylaws, we provide the policy that we're governed by. And I'm just going to have Bruce to go back over the policy and talk about the role that we did in August, which will not take.
Yeah, but my suggestion was to discuss that, not just to get another presentation of.
But
documents.
what are we discussing? I don't understand.
Well,
Because, we're bound by the policy, so.
Okay, but one thing is to say, okay, we could, for example, it says that we cannot change certain things, that we cannot be providers, but can we suggest things? Can we,
Yes.
because the only thing I'm doing for all the meetings I have been here is listening to presentations and asking questions. I don't see how that is advising. So I'm thinking maybe we have a discussion of what advising means, see what other districts do, how things are done in a way that may be more enriching for the district. Because the idea of an advisory council may be sometimes to hear the voices and suggestions of the members. And I haven't seen that, maybe because I joined later through the year. I don't know.
So sorry I know we're short on time. So there have been times when, yes, there have been suggestions made, and sometimes they have been minor suggestions, and sometimes they've been more major suggestions, and sometimes, so they have been comments from one of the, or two of the committee members, or three of the committee members. There have been other times when there have been suggestions by way of an actual motion that has been made, and then there's a vote, and that suggestion is then presented more formally. And so those things have happened, but they don't necessarily happen every meeting. And I do believe that by nature of some of the questions that are asked and the discussion that ensues, that people have, staff members have understood concerns and taken that into consideration into their work as well. And I see Christine and Randy. I think Christine, you were first.
I apologize. I didn't take my hand down from last time.
Okay, so Randy, you did raise your hand, I believe.
Yes, I just wanted to comment on the advisory, what versus policy. And, my understanding, and I've sat on many committees and even in Tallahassee on one of the DOE, Florida DOE committees, is that has in the role of advisory, we advise staff and then they make the decision. We're not a policy committee. So in the role as an advisory is an advisory to the staff, and they have made changes prior on our comments, but we don't make policy. And I don't know if that's a correct interpretation, but as far as, being on an advisory, many advisory committees at the state level and local levels, is that we don't set policy, we don't change policy, but we come from a wealth of information from different members, and within that we make our comments and our suggestions to the
Committee. Yeah.
Sherelle?
Yeah. Also, last year we had was it Keith that came to us? Remember how they wanted to try to find the people that needed to graduate, because he asked us what could we do, how could we help them, any suggestions. So they came to us to get our feedback, to find out what they can do to get certain people to graduate, because they was looking for these people. Also, we had where they were seeking information from us about VPK. There was a group that they didn't know how to go out to get them to join VPK. So they came to us as the advisory board, and we gave them suggestions. So it's just a matter of, like she said, we're advising. They do come to us to ask questions, but we can't make any policies. But our feedback is helpful because we represent, like whoever you represent, you're representing that community. So whatever you're saying, you're speaking from them as a whole. So it's not like you're going to make any decisions, but this group, it's a great group because it's educational. It helps you know what's going on that you may not necessarily know in school. You may not know what's going on, but as a whole, and it tells how the district is affecting everyone and how well they're doing and how they're struggling and what they're doing to resolve it. Does that make sense? Or does that put certain things at ease for you?
For me?
No, for Gabriella. Yeah, her.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
No, I just suggested that we discuss all that in the future, in another meeting, May or April. But yes, I understand so far.
And one other place that we do give advice as well is the district has sought our advice regarding the instructional materials, the library.
Oh yeah, definitely the library. Yeah,
the library.
I thought about that. Yeah,
we do have that frequent request.
Yes.
to
that
be
was
able
very
to give
that was
feedback.
very recent.
And I think that's also been very helpful.
It has been very
actually protect part of what you were speaking about earlier, Gabrielle. So thank you for your patience, Dr. Sheffield. And so since you had commented that the AI would be a shorter presentation, I think my guess is the committee is comfortable whichever one of those two items, whether you find it's better to present the VPK in April or in May. And if you would make that decision as to which one is better, I think that everyone would be fine with that.
Okay, I will follow up with staff for AI. I'll talk with him because I've seen some of the work that we're doing there. So I'll talk with Dr. Miller and that team, and then I also will talk with, I'll get with MJ with the early childhood around VPK and the transition to kinder, and want to make certain that we can do both of them to where we can have great conversations. So if we can fit them all in, both of those in April, that's what I'll put on the agenda.
Wonderful. And if, in the AI work, can we also talk about what we are doing to prepare students for future careers in AI?
If they have that, I'll put that there. I'll just, I'll make that as a bullet point.
I would include in that the work that we do with AP Computer Science work as well.
Okay. All righty.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
At 7:40, do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move.
Randy, I'll motion to adjourn.
I second.
Okay, meeting's adjourned. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you again.
Have a good evening.
Thank you all.